Misapprehension and not. If you say, it is possible for one person to know all the sciences in summary, the answer, yes and no, because the summaries are such that as with the points mentioned above, being employed appositely in suitable positions and fertile ground, they show like glass full knowledge of and proficiency in the sciences beyond them. Yes, if two people speak of the same matter, what they say will hint at the ignorance of one and the knowledge of the other. Indication and guidance and not. Brother of conscience who has traveled with me in the imagination through the previous stopping places of this book, take a broad look and weigh them up. Convene a high council in your imagination to judge them. Then summon your choice from the 12 premises to secure their presence. Then consult with the following rules. One person cannot be an expert and proficient in numerous sciences. Also, when two people speak of the same matter, what they say differs. Also, the sciences are the product of the meeting of minds in the course of time. Also, something that is self-evident in the future may have been hypothetical in the past. Also, what is known by the civilized may be unknown to the uncivilized. Also, it is a false analogy and misleading to compare the past to the future. Also, the simplicity of hunters and desert dwellers is quite dissimilar to the trickery and cunning of peasants, and the civilized trickery is disguised behind the veil of civilization. Also, many sciences may be given rise to and provoked by customs, circumstances, and events. Also, the light of human vision cannot penetrate the future and cannot see what is particular to it. Also, human laws have a natural lifespan. At some point, they cease like human respiration. Also, time and place have a powerful effect on the affairs of people. Also, things that formerly were considered marvels may now be looked on as commonplace, for ways and means have been perfected. Also, no matter how wondrous human intelligence may be, it is inadequate to perfect a science all at once. So, how could it perfect numerous sciences? Brother, consult with these matters, then withdraw and assume the position of inspector. Divest yourself completely of the imaginings and assumptions of time and place. Then, from the shore of this age, enter the boundless ocean of time and emerge on the island of the era of bliss. What will strike your eye before all else is a single person who, bereft of helper and power, is challenging the whole world. He has taken on his shoulders a truth greater than the globe, a Sharia and code of laws which guarantees the happiness of all humankind, which as the sum and substance of all the divine sciences and branches of true knowledge, expands in conjunction with the unfolding of the human potentialities and establishes such justice that it organizes humankind's circumstances, yielding fruits in this world and the next, as though men were members of a single council and the people of the same era. If you were to ask the Sharia's laws whence they had come and where they were going, they would tell you that they had come from eternity, and that, accompanying humankind for its well-being on the road to eternity, they were headed for post-eternity. Even if their outward links with us are severed after departure from this transient world, in spirit they will always be the guide and spiritual sustenance of humankind. Conclusion. There are three sources of doubts. It is like this. You feign ignorance of what the lawgiver intends and the guidance that is commensurate with the capacity of people's minds, and you object, uttering the following erroneous statement, which is the breeding ground of all evil suspicions. The Qur'an, which is the chief component of the Sharia, comprises three doubtful points. The first, the Qur'an contains allegorical verses and obscurities which are opposed to eloquence, and eloquence is the cause of its distinction and is based on clarity of expression. The second, the Qur'an is vague and general concerning the physical sciences, and this is contrary to guidance and instruction, the true purposes of the Sharia. The third, some of the Qur'an's literal meanings tend to be contrary to rational proof, and so may be opposed to reality, and this is incompatible with verification and guidance, which constitute its method and way. Brother, success is from God. I say that these 3 points which you claim are defects are not as you imagine. The 3 of them are rather veracious witnesses to the Qur'an's miraculous inimitability. Answer to the first point. You have anyway twice received the implicit answer to this. It is as follows. Ordinary people form the majority, and in the lawgiver's view, the minority follows the majority. For the elite understands and profits from a discourse addressed to the common people, while the opposite is not true. The common people cannot free themselves from what they are familiar with and how they imagine them, and they can comprehend abstract ideas and sheer truths only through the telescope of the imagination. But to see the depictions of imaginary things and restrict attention to them necessarily gives rise to such impossibilities as their embodiment and having physical dimensions. And then they are seen as actual things rather than mere depictions. For instance, the mass of people can see divine rule over the beings in the cosmos in the form of the Sultan's rule on the throne of his dominion, as in the most gracious on the throne of his almightiness. Since they perceive things in this way, guidance and eloquence require that their feelings are taken into account and respected, and that allowance is made for their understanding. Such respect and allowance for human understanding is called divine condescension. The purpose of this condescension is to familiarize and get the people to understand. You may refer to the 10th premise. By reason of the above, the depictions in the allegorical verses have been put as telescopes to flatter the feelings of the mass of people with their fanciful views so that they may look on the abstract truths. This answer is corroborated by the fact that numerous metaphors are utilized in speech generally in order to contextualize or depict profound or various meanings in a simple and straightforward way. That is to say, the allegorical verses are the most abstruse of metaphors, for they are the parabolic forms of hidden truths. This means that the abstruseness is due not to the incomprehensibility of the words, but to the subtlety of the meanings. You who objects, consider this fairly. Is it not in conformity with eloquence, which is to speak suitably to any situation and clearly in any context, to bring close to the people's understanding in this way those truths which are furthest from them, or is it as you imagine it to be? You judge for yourself. Answer to the second point. This was discussed in detail in the second premise. The sciences are successive and sequential, for they are the fruits of man's inclination to progress, a branch of the desire in the world to be perfected, and are like the steps of the ladder of progress formed through numerous experiments and the products of the meeting of minds. The formation of the succeeding one is dependent on the forming of the previous one. That is, the science which is previous becomes established as axiomatic, then it may be preliminary to one that succeeds it. It is because of this that supposing a man had tried 10 centuries ago to teach a science which had come into being through the refinement of experiments, he would have done nothing but cause confusion and error. For instance, if he had said, "Behold the stationary sun and rotating earth and the swarming millions of living organisms in a droplet of water," then conceive of the Maker's grandeur, the mass of people would have either denied it due to their superficial view and their supposing it to be contrary to what their external senses perceived, or they would have deceived themselves or competed with it. But to confuse people, especially over a period of 1,000 years, is a grievous error when offering guidance. In short, the earth being flat and the rotation of the sun were considered by them to be self-evident truths, since that is how they saw them. Note: matters like this cannot be compared with future theoretical matters, for matters that belong to the future are possible in two respects, since they are not connected with the external senses. They may be believed in, for they are possible. One may feel confident about them. Clearly their right is to be clarified. But errors arising from the senses raised this matter of ours, that is, matters dealt with by the physical sciences, from the level of possibility to that of plain self-evidence, that is, to that of compounded ignorance. Whereas their undeniable right in the view of eloquence is to be vague and indefinite lest the people's minds become confused. Nevertheless, allusions, hints, and indications should be made to the truth. Doors should be opened to minds, and they should be invited to enter. That is, anyway, what the illustrious Sharia has done. Brother, is it fair, is it investigating the truth, to imagine to be contrary to guidance the thing that is the very essence of guidance and pure eloquence, and to suppose to be defective something which according to eloquence is perfection itself? Is it eloquence according to your defective understanding to cast the people's minds into error and confusion and to propose things reason cannot support because time and place have not adequately equipped their understanding? God forbid. The rule, speak to people in accordance with their understanding, is wise and meaningful. Refer to the premises if you wish, especially the first premise. Ponder over it. Now, the answer to the third point, which is that some of the literal meanings of verses are contrary to rational evidences. Study the first premise, then listen to this. The lawgiver's main aims in guiding the mass of people are proof of the single Maker, prophethood, the resurrection of the dead, and justice. In which case, mention of the universe is secondary and digressive. It is in order to deduce from the wonders order in the art, which is clearly apparent to people, the existence of the all-glorious Maker, who is the true orderer. The works of art and their order are apparent in everything. The manner of their formation is unrelated to their main purpose. Note: it is an established fact that the evidence has to be known before what is being asserted. Therefore, the literal meanings of some verses incline towards the people's beliefs, which are acquired through their external senses, in order to clarify the evidence and familiarize the ideas. They are not for purposes of deduction, for the Qur'an has placed hints and associations in the web of its verses, which for investigators of the truth point to and indicate the pearls in those shells and the truths in the literal meanings. Yes, some verses of the perspicuous Qur'an, which is the word of God, expound other verses. That is, some verses disclose what is hidden in their sisters' hearts, in which case some may indicate others. Their literal meanings are not intended. Misapprehension and note: if it is said by way of inference or deduction, consider the wonders of electricity, the marvels of the laws of general attraction, the daily and annual rotations of the earth, the chemical combinations of the more than 70 elements, and the motionlessness of the sun together with its apparent motion. Know that the Maker exists. In this case, the art, which is the evidence, would be more obscure than the conclusion, which is knowledge of the Maker, and since it would be more obscure and contrary to the rules of inference, people would incline towards understanding some of the verses literally. But such verses contain associative expressions and allusions, and these are neither true nor false. For instance, the alif in the word kala is alif even if it is actually waw, or kaf even it does not affect it. Brother, be fair. Aren't these three objections the very clearest evidence of the miraculous inimitability of the Qur'an, which was revealed to guide all the people of all times? Indeed, I swear by the one who taught the miraculous Qur'an that the view of the bringer of good news and warner and his critical insights were too fine, brilliant, and penetrating to confuse truth and illusion, and his way of truth was too elevated, pure, and exalted to deceive people or mislead them. Note: this Arabic piece indicates the refutation of two invalid schools. Indeed, how could imagination show itself to be the truth in his light scattering view? His way is pure truth, and his method purely right. Truth and right are free of deception and do not lead astray. The fifth way. This concerns the well-known apparent wonders and perceptible miracles. The books of biography and history are loaded with them. The illustrious ulama, may God reward them well, have categorized them and expounded them appropriately. We have skipped the details so as not to teach what is already known. Although there may be no consensus concerning the transmission of all the instances of the apparent wonders, there are many in their different categories, and so may be considered to be unanimously reported in respect of their meanings. There are several categories of those wonders. One category is the various irhasat, as though that century profited from the messenger, upon whom be blessings and peace, as a highly sensitive wonder worker that had premonitions of his coming and gave news of it. Another category was the numerous predictions of the future, as if the messengers, upon whom be blessings and peace, ethereal, winged spirit rent the bonds of fixed time and space wrought in the climes of the past and the future, then told us of what it had witnessed. Another, wonders that could be perceived by the physical senses and were performed during the period of his challenging the existing order. These have been said to number nearly 1,000. That is to say, as we said, even if each miracle was reported from only one source, in total they may be considered as being reported unanimously in respect of their meanings. And another is water flowing from his blessed fingers, as though with its flowing from his blessed hand, which was a source of munificence, the water, the living of life, was depicting the outpouring of the water of guidance, the living of spirits, from his tongue, which was the source of guidance. And another was the utterances of trees, stones, and animals, as though the spiritual life of his guidance spread to inanimate beings and animals and brought them to speech. And another was the splitting of the moon, as though the moon, which is like the heart of the sky, longingly split its pure shining breast at the sign of his blessed finger in order to form a relationship with his blessed heart. Note: the splitting of the moon may be held to be unanimously reported in respect of its meaning and is established by the verse, "and the moon split," for those who denied the Qur'an did not object to it. And apart from one first interpretation that does not deserve attention, the verse has not been interpreted otherwise. Thus, and note: the whole world did not necessarily witness the splitting of the moon, since it was both unexpected and it occurred at night when people were heedless, and there were no celestial observations at that time, and there were shooting stars, and the times of moonrise differed according to place. But it was affirmed by those who were present at the time it occurred. One of these, and the first and foremost, was the perspicuous Qur'an. Its miraculousness has been proved above to a small extent in 7 respects, and so on and so forth. I refer you to the relevant, reliable books for the rest of the miracles. Conclusion. O you who have studied these words of mine, consider all I have said, that is, the above 5 ways, attentively and with a broad and balanced view, and looking on them as an encircling enclosure or wall, gaze on the prophethood of Muhammad, upon whom be blessings and peace, at their center. Or see them as mutually supporting soldiers surrounding the Sultan, in order that together with the other mutually responsive and assisting answers, they may repulse the groundless suspicions that assault from one side. This being the case, in reply to the question of the Japanese, what is the clear proof of the existence of the God you are calling us to? I say this: Muhammad, upon whom be blessings and peace. Indication, guidance, and note. On science, being sent as interrogator and questioner by the universe and the government of creation, it happened upon the vanguard of humankind, which was turned towards the future, and it posed human beings with the following questions: Sons of man, where do you come from, and at whose command? What are you doing? Where are you going? What is your origin, and what is your destination? Upon this, the guide, leader, and orator of humankind, Muhammad, upon whom be blessings and peace, rose to his feet and replied to science, which had proceeded from the garments of creation: Interrogator, sir, we companions of beings have come as officials from the realm of divine power on the orders of the pure eternal monarch. He is the pure eternal ruler, the necessary accident, the possessor of all the attributes of perfection. He has clothed us in the garment of existence and bestowed on us our faculties and capabilities, which are our capital and felicity. We companions of man are at present busy preparing for everlasting happiness. Then later we shall depart all together for the bodily resurrection of the dead, and shall head for eternity. So science, don't quibble or talk nonsense. Relate exactly what you have seen and heard. The third aim. This is the bodily resurrection of the dead. Yes, there would be no creation without it. It would be futile. The resurrection is indeed true and right, and its clearest proof is Muhammad, upon whom be blessings and peace. Introduction. The perspicuous Qur'an has set forth bodily resurrection so clearly it has left not the slightest doubt concerning it. Here, as far as we can, we are going to point out several of its aims and stopping places in order to expound its proofs. The first aim. The following are truthful witnesses to bodily resurrection and true, verifiable proofs of it: the perfect order in the universe, the total wisdom in creation, the absence of futility in the world, the absence of waste in the innate disposition of things, the induction established by all the sciences, the repeated resurrections of a sort in many realms of beings, such as the alternations of the days and years, the essence of the human capabilities, the infinite hopes of human beings, the all-wise Maker's mercy, the veracious messengers, upon whom be blessings and peace, tone, and the expositions of the inimitable Qur'an. Stopping place and indication. 1. If there were no everlasting happiness, the cosmic order would consist only of a flimsy and fatuous form. All its non-material aspects, bonds, and relationships would go for nothing. This means that what makes the order is eternal happiness. 2. Divine wisdom, the exemplification of pure eternal providence, proclaims eternal happiness, since it pursues, uses, and proposes in all beings. For if there were no eternal happiness, all the self-evident instances of wisdom and benefits in the universe would compete with each other and cease to be thus. 3. The absence of futility in creation, which is testified to by reason, wisdom, and induction, points to eternal happiness within the resurrection of the dead, indeed is evidence of it. For absolute non-existence would make everything futile and pointless. 4. The absence of waste in the nature of things, for instance, in the microcosm that is man, which is testified to by the science of anatomy, proves the absence of waste in man's mental faculties and hopes, ideas, and desires. And this announces that he is destined for eternal happiness. 5. If it were not so, those faculties and desires would all wither up and go for nothing. Is it at all possible? Could the shell of a pearl worth the world be cherished and prized, protecting it from a speck of dust even, and then that priceless pearl be smashed and destroyed? No, indeed. It is cherished for its own sake. 6. Indeed, as explained above, the perfect cosmic order, the existence of which is established by induction and all the sciences, necessitates everlasting happiness with him bodily resurrection, which saves the order from defect and disturbance and will manifest perfectedness and eternal life. 7. The days, years, human lifespan, and rotations of the world precede each other like the workings of a clock which count the seconds, minutes, hours, and days. They indicate that as the morning follows the night and spring the winter, so the resurrection will follow on after death and appear from that workshop. Yes, each individual human being resembles a species, for the light of thought has given such breath to his hopes that he would not be satisfied even if he so loved all time. The nature, worth, view, attainments, pleasures, and pains of the members of other species are particular, individual, limited, restricted, and instantaneous, but those of human beings are elevated, universal, and everlasting. The very source of recurrent, diurnal, and annual resurrections of many species hint at and point to a general, personal resurrection of man. Indeed, they testify to it. 8. The unlimited potentialities included in the essence of man's spirit, and the unlimited abilities contained in those potentialities, and the endless desires arising from those abilities, and the infinite hopes resulting from those endless desires, and the limitless thoughts and ideas born of those infinite hopes are hands stretched out towards eternal happiness, which is beyond this manifest world, and our eyes gazing at it, being turned towards it. 9. The mercy of the all-wise Maker, the all-merciful and compassionate One, will bestow on the human race everlasting happiness to make his bounties bounty and save them from being an affliction and deliver the universe from the anguish of eternal separation. For if divine mercy were not to bestow everlasting happiness, the chief of all bounties, the bounties would turn into rancor and be transformed into an affliction, and one would have to deny the mercy, the existence of which is indubitably established by the testimony of the whole universe. Brother, consider the various bounties of love, compassion, and affection, then think of everlasting separation and unending parting. Love becomes a grievous calamity. This means that eternal separation cannot confront love. Everlasting happiness will deal everlasting separation such a blow, it will dispatch it to eternal non-existence. 10. The 5 ways set out above, together with the tone of our Prophet, upon whom be blessings and peace, whose truthfulness and veracity has been proven, are the keys to everlasting happiness within the treasure of bodily resurrection. 11. The Qur'an of miraculous exposition, the miraculous inimitability of which has been proved in 7 respects for 13 centuries, is the disclosure of bodily resurrection and is its revealer and initiator. The second aim is an exposition of two proofs of resurrection which are alluded to by the Qur'an, as follows. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Üstad Bediüzzaman, the author of this treatise, wrote at the beginning of the ninth ray of the Risale-i Nur, which he composed 30 years later. It's a subtle instance of dominical grace that 30 years ago, at the end of his work entitled Muhakemat, Rational Arguments, Prescription for the Ulama, which was written to set out the principles of Qur'anic exegesis, the old Sayyid wrote, second aim, two Qur'anic verses alluding to the resurrection of the dead will be expounded and explained. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. There he stopped and could write no further. Now, praise and thanks be to my compassionate Creator, to the number of signs and indications of the resurrection, that 30 years later he has given me success.